I'm here just
Okay. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome here to the SMARTlab. How many of you, is this your first time to a Knowledge Cafe, or not too sure quite who I am or what this is about? Quite a few of you, including that man there who doesn't know better. Okay, I mean, my name is David Gurteen. I guess if you're trying to describe me, I describe myself as an independent educator come facilitator. Fundamentally what I'm about is helping people better share their knowledge, better learn from each other, and better collaborate together. And one of the things I did about 5 years ago was create something I call the Gurteen Knowledge community. That's something now about 14,000 people in 150 countries around the world. And the Knowledge Cafes that I run, that I started in London about 3 years ago, are essentially meetings for members of that community in London. But they're public, anybody can actually come along. And I've now got those cafes running in 6 cities around the world, including New York and Adelaide in Australia. But the one here in London has been running about 3 or 4 years now. And the whole idea of the cafe is to bring people together to have what I call interesting conversations. So rather than some boring old fart like me standing up here and presenting to you all evening, typically somebody presents for maybe only 10, 15, at the most 20 minutes or so. It might be a little bit longer this evening, it does vary. But really the essence of the cafe is to bring people together to have conversations. And I'm not talking about debate, I'm talking about sort of open conversations, learning conversations, what's often referred to as dialogue, where people are coming together to, if you like, understand each other and learn from each other and realise that different people, because of their different backgrounds and their different ways of seeing the world, have got different perspectives. This is the fundamental essence behind the cafe. Let's kind of pause there. Often I do a little bit of speed networking at the beginning of these sessions, but we're starting a little bit late. I think you've all got a glass of wine or two. You've all met and chatted to a lot of people. I think as we get going, you'll get to talk to a lot more people. I'm absolutely delighted that Sheila Robinson here has made this possible. Sheila's a regular member of the cafe and has come along to, I guess, quite a few of them over the years. So Sheila initiated this, and Elizabeth Goodman here is the director of the SMARTlab. So great big thank you to both you ladies for making this possible this evening, because this cafe is a little bit different to some of the others in so much that there's some interesting technology here, some interesting stuff going on that we've come to visit. Where normally we just have some conversations, so there's a little bit more substance to this one in a way. So I'll shut up and I'll hand over to.
Okay. I just want to say welcome to all of you. I always wanted to attend a Knowledge Cafe, and I kept trying to get there, never quite did, and now you've come to us, and I can't imagine anything nicer, and I hope you'll keep coming, and we'll set up some more events in the future, I hope. I'm Elizabeth Goodman. I direct the SMARTlab Centre here at UEL. It's the Digital Media Institute. We've been here for only 9 months. That is, I've been here for 9 months. The rest of the team joined anywhere from 6 months ago to today. So many of the people you see here, this is their first day of work with us. The space that we're in right now, which we call the Playroom, it's really one of our first operational days in the space. We're still figuring out what works, which comes alive and everything else. So you join us at a very new moment. It's exciting for us, and I hope functional for you. And I want to say just a few words about what SMARTlab is, just so you know where you are, and then tell you what's in the room so you know what you can play with if you want to come back and work with us. And that's all I'll say, and I'll hand over to Sheila. So SMARTlab has existed for roughly 15 years under various different names. We were at the Open University of BBC for 8 years. We were then at the University of Surrey for 4 years. We were then at Central St Martin's for roughly 4 years, and we've just moved here. Many of the team have followed us from place to place, and we've just kept growing. We change names when we need to in order to share the technology tools that we make, often for free. And my colleagues will gasp because that's not a good business model, but we find that it actually is our very best business model. We make technology tools with and for people with disabilities, children in the developing world, kids in hospitals, people in physical rehabilitation centres, women in domestic violence shelters is one of our main sites. So SMARTlab stands for Site-Specific Media Arts. We bring artists and technologists together to make tools that matter, even if it's only for one person. And the way that this works as a business model is, and the reason that we have a butterfly as our symbol, we have a core research team in the middle, myself and all the other academics who write books and do all the usual professorial duties of a researcher. But we also work off-site and we run large-scale projects all around the world, all with some kind of ethical or social commitment along the lines I described. And then we have two wings. One is creative industries, where anything that might be potentially for profit that links across to game design or ITC for the developing world, anything which I understand that most of you are probably most interested in, fits on one wing, and the Magic Centre here, the Multimedia and Games Innovation Centre, fits in that wing of what we do. But wings on a butterfly flap, actually behind you, and the Often Touch, and the other part that touches all of that is our not-for-profit, charity-based work. We run a safety net project, which is linked to the UN and UNESCO. We run other projects like the Trust Project in the Stephen Hawking School at the moment, but internationally, projects that will never make a profit, and that we aim to fund or at least break even with through the stuff that does make a profit. So that's our business model, and surprisingly enough, it works because people will pay for what matters at the end of the day. That's what SMARTlab is, and I'll just tell you what's in this room. Most of us have never used it. A lot of it came out of the box today, and some of the boxes are in the hallway, but I'll tell you what we will be, and you can see something behind you. What will be here behind the screen is the People Lab, Jose Marinas, who is somewhere in the room, over there. Jose is in from New York and is working with Rob Kedlin, who's in from MIT, and a range of other scholars and researchers and programmers to make the People Lab, which is an accessible technology lab. We will invite kids, women, community groups from across London into this space to work, and we'll also go out on the road with BBC Blast and some of the mobile transport units to be determined which and where we'll go first. And the idea is to take technologies like laser cutters and 3D scanners and all kinds of equipment that most of us, including myself, don't have access to, make it available for free with skills training from people from a variety of abilities, ages, ethnic groups, languages, cultural backgrounds, and then to see what people really want to make if they have access to the tools. So that's one of our largest projects, and the gear is just being set up back here. And as soon as we have our first People Lab event, we will make sure you're all invited and see what happens. We will also have in this room the Immersive Play Lab, which is linked to the SODA. It's a small medium enterprise, SME here in London, and they make immersive games for children primarily, but not exclusively, and they're education-based, physics-based engine animations online, which are easy to use and require no knowledge of technology, but make really beautiful, very simple animations, and you can build cities, for instance. So some of our projects linked to the Thames Gateway Regeneration Project and the 2012 Games coming in will be using SODA, cities, and other animation tools and user-generated content, video streaming tools, which others in our group make, to build cities and to look at sustainable development through gaming technology design. So we'll be running some workshops and labs on that here. We also have the Smart Textiles group. Daria Dorish is here. Gail Knowles is here, who makes olfactory scents, botanical scents, which can be used for healing or for triggering, as we are about 3D environments, VR or 3D environments. And some of these wearable technologies and immersive environment trigger technologies will be built in this room and then shared and spoken about from this room, but will also go off-site as soon as that group has time to develop some of their garments. We're working with the bodkin designers from Ireland as well as some of Daria's team, making not only smart textiles, and hopefully soon we will have the 3D whole glove knitting machine which spits out an entire glove and can be embedded with sensors, which can be used by people with disabilities, or to trigger VR environments for learning or for rehabilitation for those who no longer have a limb, for instance, as well as for your standard gaming applications. So soon that will all be over here where our mannequins are standing around. We have other groups. We have, and I won't go into them all, we have a whole range of PhD students in the room. That's one of the largest things that we do. We run a practice-based PhD program where we bring artists, technologists, computer scientists, medical doctors, business experts, a range of people from a variety of backgrounds together, and the aim of what we do is to find the places where those disciplines mix and make something that matters. We're not interested so much in projects that industry would fund anyway, though we do take industry grants, but usually from the corporate social responsibility end. And if we can find industry partners who are interested in making things that matter within our own concept of a business plan, then we're very interested. But primarily we're interested in those intersections, where all those disciplines come together and create an energy and an impetus for social change. And that's really what we're about. Yep. So I'll hand you over.
Americans, Scandinavians, people from Ireland, people, one of the Canadians actually has been working in Finland, although she's actually gone home. And it's a shame because Susan's background is the mobile and world, and she's also been part of the Nokia 47 Insight group, but her presentation was earlier. And she apologises because her little boy is only 3 months old. We've got a whole range of capability in the disabled world, and sensors, interfaces, how are people going to work together, how are people actually going to use technologies. And one of the reasons we thought this would be really interesting this evening was to actually seed the room with questions about how digital environments might change the way in which we view knowledge in the future. And nobody's expecting a definitive answer. What we would like to do is have conversations around what difference this technology is actually going to have, what impact will it have in the way that we work. How will we see knowledge in the future when the knowledge might be embedded in something that we're wearing, or a knitting map literally on the wall. And it might have sensors in it, it might have something in the way that you view it, where you might comment or feed into it. So how is that going to change the way in which we view things, that we learn things, and the way in which we want to work? So all these issues, I mean, we have a list, and I'm not going to ask anybody who wants to work on each question. What I'm going to do is be very fascist and just hand them out. But equally, if you don't like the question, move. Okay? We've got plenty of space, and all the chairs and all the tables moving here. Just don't do it all at the same time. We did this afternoon with the Clash of Community. How does that enable enterprise, and how could we do that better? And in looking at issues like that, I don't have an answer. I don't even really know which part of the thread to pull. What I have to do is look at what the models might be, and then see what isn't happening. And I haven't got, at this moment, an answer. I had a supervision with somebody really very skillful in the computing department this afternoon. And what he said was, look at the models and look at what doesn't work. But I haven't, from that, got an answer. I'm only looking at the gaps. So tonight's really about, where do we see the gaps? What might come out of this? And we hope some collaboration. Maybe people here will choose to collaborate with some of the people in the room. Maybe some synergy, maybe something we haven't any of us thought of. There's enough wine, maybe that's a happen. The nice thing is, I think everybody's in a good space. People have worked very hard this week. We've also had reflective time, and I hope that tonight will also be part of that. So, I'm not even going to read the questions, I'm just going to go around the tables. I've got 8, I think, questions, so let's just see how we get on. And I have questions out, I have pieces of the flip chart out, and it's just going to have to be a kind of interactive performance.
Okay.
So you just get what you get. Sue's decided something. Yeah.
More people.
Oh wait, they're not going to do
That's all.
We need to mix it up with people that are not in this, otherwise
That's
it's
right.
going to be
If you want to throw it back into a historical context, in 1066, a tapestry.
Was it
so you get a contrary opinion, and yet you can't. I don't think actually let you order the reviews by star. You have to just. I wonder how many other people do that. I find the reviews that get high stars often just like praises of the book. They don't always, I mean some do, but they don't always provide you with criticism and a balance. That's what I find useful. Is getting both sides.
If you're discovering it, it means it has some sort of independent existence.
So does that mean
isn't that what that question is suggesting? That knowledge will have some kind of independent existence if it's on a mobile network?
Yes, certainly. Is it the case that it existed?
Well, I've worked in knowledge management for the last 5 years.
Where we come from. If you're in the Gurteen group, knowledge is where you come from.
It is, because I think I feel smart. Well, I'm very interested in this because I want to know what is the difference between data and knowledge and information.
Right. What's this?
What the knowledge that leaves with people. You know, like in families where someone dies and information, if it hasn't been passed on in some way, it's lost in a generation. It's the same thing with companies. How do companies stop from losing that important information that's lost in a generation or under certain leadership? So what is that? What is that mechanism?
There are a couple of mechanisms. First, in the community you have oral tradition. This is a very close neighborship. These are neighborships, these are families. Then what is very important, I would like to talk about it, are places where people can gather together. In former times marketplaces, it may be the pub, the restaurant. So, of course, it's very important.
Where they're coming from, I think. So in terms of what your own knowledge and background and experiences are, and how you interact with new information or new knowledge, and how you apply that, or how you judge it, and what you do.
Jot it down then.
Jot it down? Yeah, go on then.
Well,
What did you say? Background.
Yeah. I think our background, our experiences.
with background, you mean education?
Well,
particularly from the dancers and phenomenologists, is that the knowledge exists within the body and that the kinesthetic experience of sharing, whether it's in a classroom or in a computer program, especially with the touch screen, is an embodied knowledge being imparted through technology. That was a fascinating talk. It's also between. It's also a between state. What they're arguing is that, I suppose, cultural memory and body memory hold so much of what we know of who we are. Another big question, which we talked about for 2 hours today, I have to say. It's been a long day.
Wonderful interfaces. Probably one is called TAD. I'll send you the connection if you like. It's a screen about the size of the table, which is a touch screen that does almost an infinite number of inputs at the same time. So you can take your 10 fingers or our 30 fingers.
I've seen this. Was it on the TED Talk?
It's on a big kind of table.
Yeah.
And you can manipulate it. It takes touch, it takes pressure, and it's simultaneous. So you want to open it.
On YouTube.
Demonstration of something when he was taking a RASA site and navigating through it. So navigating through it by doing that, and ended up closing it. And then he was also holding it on that side and doing that.
Turn it around.
And then he was tipping. He was tipping in 3 dimensions, but it was here.
Right. Yeah.
Wasn't up here that he was doing.
Exactly. And it is.
if in a government department I created other people amend it, maybe the government amended retrospectively, is that the sort of issue we're thinking about? Is an email a text? Yeah.
I don't know.
So what is a text?
What is a text?
Any recorded information other than numeric in the Latin alphabet or whatever alphabet is text.
With text, there's the actual physical letters.
Recorded alphabet.
And then there's the. I would say when you're talking about Shakespeare, you're talking about, again, some kind of meaning, again, and you're talking about text. Value.
ASCII recorded text in digital form. Is there a definition?
Is there a common definition of it within this field? Would be the question I ask.
Within which field?
Text means.
Within which field, though?
It could mean a piece of writing. It could mean a verbal conversation recorded on a video camera.
Yeah.
It could be a picture. It could be a data byte of some information.
Or a play. Or an oral story, like you said.
Oral story.
So text is a misnomer as well.
It could be anything from a single number through to the Oxford Concise Dictionary. I don't know what the definition of it is, and therefore can't relate through the rest of the question.
And because
the most interesting word here is this will. As if this doesn't already happen. Right? I mean, I can say that our watches already wearable technologies, or our glasses that we're wearing. Also, it's a credit card that I have.
Shall we put the will in here?
Well, has changed.
Yeah, wearable technology has changed the way we store. Is this red? Good.
Because this will go back to the point you were saying. I can probably track everything you've done if you just give me your credit card number. I know every place you've been, you've shopped, which turns out you've actually been personally, right? It's not an ID card, but it tracks a certain aspect of your life that's just as descriptive as who you are. Exactly. And it's also a form of storage.
Well, we're talking about some pretty tricky stuff here, because here Jose wants to put together a pickles lab. There's a lot of trust in that people won't come in there to make a bomb. In other words, can we trust each other not to make things that will harm each other? You know, the guy who's going to put the implant in us so we can get to the airport, or we can download the software. How do we know we're not getting what we got from Sony that goes into your hard drive and starts crunching away at everything? So we're down to ethics, and we're down to, you know, a whole lot of things that come out of knowledge that the human race has been struggling with for ages.
I think it's so much a case of waking up to where the world is at.
Where is it at, though? Where
I see
something if we don't stay connected all the time. Forget it. I'm not going to ever be there. I want this and this. Please don't have these things popping up every 5 minutes with the latest news. But it took concerted effort to get them switched on.
One of the starting points you were saying about people's channel preferences, personality, introvert, extrovert, particularly, I think is important as well. You know, I'm very happy to be in touch. I like to be in touch anywhere. My wife absolutely hates it. You know, she's an INTJ, I'm an ENTP, so I love interaction, exploration, blue skies, what's the next thing, you know, that's great. So the notion of having connectivity and being somewhere and somebody texts me and say, hey, you're up for a meeting in half an hour with somebody or whatever, I go, fantastic. Someone else just, no, I planned my day. That's not what that's not the way I want to do it. So I think people's preferences.
Is it about segmentation? Is that what you're coming down to? Is that basically within any marketing context you have different segments?
Yeah.
You're going to have the very technological savvy segment, which I think is represented over here in this corner. And you're going to have another segment here. You're going to have some segments who just use voice and text. the email as well, so that it doesn't come down to sort of almost the end of the mass market. It's to do with what are you going to target on specific segments, and what is this going to mean for different segments of the population, rather than thinking that it's going to mean the same thing for all different segments.
I think that's right, Tony.
I'm just kind of, because you can get thrown by a question, so I'm kind of dancing here. How is knowledge held in a person? How is it held in a collection of people? And then how is it held in a formal collection of people, meaning company? Because you can have a company of people, which is generally you've got a formal arrangement to it. Okay? And I think that bit's missing. And what I feel is that there's just differences of degree, and I'm very, very excited because what I've begun to see...
Knowledge only if you care, if you pursue. No, yeah, that's what he said. That's what I...
That's interesting. Because I feel like it's knowledge, probably even if you don't care. But then... So I guess though, like...
But that means that life is infinite, isn't it? Knowledge should be what you need at this moment when you seek out. Tomorrow I might seek out something else.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of what I value is knowledge.
At this moment,
I don't care anything about Britney Spears, but I don't know very much about her. Therefore,
so just knowing.
But I don't think it's knowledge just because I don't know it. Whereas the depth of the sea oceans, I don't know that, but I think that's knowledge because I value it more than I value Britney Spears.
So that is a perspective in this time, space-time situation, isn't it?
Yeah, value is very important.
And time.
Because again, it comes
time
back
frame.
to context. Yeah, well, I might value something because I want to use it, or I want just out of interest, I want to find out more about it. But you might not value it. It's not useful to you.
That's why I'm disputing this. What you don't know.
Yeah, okay. I think I agree with you on that. It's not
That's very powerful.
How powerful will it be in the future, though?
I mean, capturing things on paper, you're
arguably we may be going from a well, as we went from an oral culture when most people couldn't read.
Index and archive.
Invented poems.
You can retrieve it
and the necessity.
you can.
I don't know if it's as powerful as reading, though.
No, but we're going from being,
accounting firms,
we've only had television.
You get spreadsheets, they are not archived, and you have to...
Because it's something that has to be perceived. It's not like I can say, well, here's some knowledge. It's not until you actually become a participant in that consumption that it really becomes knowledge.
So, sorry. These were both questions.
Just all
What we thought we'd do is
we're not coming up with answers because it's a question.
We're just going to take apart the question.
Interesting conversation points. I think there is we're a fairly cynical group here. There is a positive. There is a positive here. The positive is, the stuff is available. You don't have to wait to get to the next contact point, whether it's your PC or TV or whatever. If I want to know what the next train home is, and I'm wearing the stuff. Yeah, it could make life easier. Yeah, it could make. Tell me how I get to Richmond from Cyprus. Okay, brilliant. As it is currently, to think before I go, and print off the instructions for going home.
If we're saying increasingly we're going to have to get people out of the silos, cross into different networks, learn from different disciplines, it makes them much more independent. That's right. Much more free thinking, much more able to go off and change careers and change employers, and for it not to matter to really define their own career. It empowers them to take their own career. So for me,
How many people will jam with me? And I'll say, hey, I can talk to this guy. It's not jamming. Once you start jamming, as you say, we have a conversation.
And then you can lead out of the jam into something else.
Then you can bring them out.
Exactly.
Then you can draw them out.
Yeah, very slowly. That was the first thing I ever...
It's the same as noise.
It's exactly the same with music, with dance. The first autistic girl I worked with for a long time, she would stand in front of a faucet. She was 6, and she would just run her hand through the faucet, and she'd do it for days until she died of starvation. Break the pattern, and to try to lead her out against her will with very and it took me ages. I was only 12 at the time. It took me a long time to figure out that if you just mirrored her movement for a long time until you were part of her movement and then led her very gently to the side, she would follow you. And eventually she would sit down, and eventually you could feed her soup with the same movement, but it would take hours. But you were in her world, in her...
So you became part of the same world.
She has one stream out, and you have to become it and then lead really, really gently.
You joined up worlds.
Does it do wrong?
Yeah, but the thing is, now we have tools we didn't have, and these tools enable us to connect across continents, across boundaries of sight, of sound, of touch, because we can create sensors for those capabilities which don't exist. So, for example, I don't have a physical receptor for balance in my, at least like my right ear, because it was burnt out as a child. I had an infection that literally almost killed me, and it burnt all the balance receptors in the ear, right? So they aren't there. I didn't know that until, very recently, when I attempted to learn to ride a motorbike and fell off.
What happened there?
Yeah, and like the guy watching me after a while, he says, and this was after some months, this is not after like 5 minutes, and he said, there's something physically wrong, and you had a serious head injury. And I said, no. You had a serious ear infection? Yes. Okay, you don't have the balance receptors. Now, I teach yoga, okay? So I have the software, I taught myself to balance, but I don't have the hardware. The hardware isn't there. But what we can do with the kids that don't have it and that can't articulate or relearn it, we can give them digital technology to replace the missing hardware. And that's one of the exercises which is taking place in here. And in that discovery, we discover all these different ways to communicate, all these different places of actions, not within the traditional data, language, image set, but in the touch, in the breathing, in actually being with somebody else. And what's also interesting with the PhD group that's here is that particular communication exists intuitively between the members of this PhD group. So we've joked repeatedly about doing one PhD.
So we won't allow that.
Yeah, she won't allow that. But the
I don't follow any blogs on a regular basis. I haven't got myself fixed up with a reader yet or managing feeds. No, that's fine. Save me typing it up. You just project it.
I'll send you the video.
Yeah, no, I look at them randomly. So I'd like to.
Feed reader helps because you can see by the headline that you can scan at once.
I suppose I should try. I will admit to hardly reading blogs at all, and they're people who I know and trust and find their thinking really interesting, but I still don't read them. I just don't like reading off the screen.
For me, I have to know about things as they happen in technology and their application across a lot of different fields. So I trust a couple people to keep up with that faster than me. So if I only watch a couple of their blogs, I can keep up to speed with it. So it saves me a ton of time of having to go through crawling through all the technology websites and so forth. There's a couple. If it breaks, you know where to find that information.
It was only recently I realised that blogs were a lot more serious than I'd taken before, and that actually the best ones are often really short. They've got links if you need them, and it's just like news, but news and stuff that's like with a trusted reporter who'll be providing information in very short, easy to digest ways. As I say, you can just keep up with headlines, and it's just a different way of having somebody, in a way, somebody doing the work for you to keep track of stuff, and it's their passion to do that, and just make the most of it.
What this is about is when you see something, is it adding errors?
At the time, on the same day, well, I have a dissident view here, which I specialise in, which is our question was about how far will mobile technology make a difference to knowledge. And we went, well, it was a good trigger, but my feeling, and other people have different ones here, is that it really triggers you thinking about networks and how once you start getting networking, how that changes the way in which you learn and share with people. So mobile technology. If you think networks rather than groups, then you think everybody is the owner of their own bit of knowledge and sharing it and so forth. So why get us into a group and try and get us to agree on one piece of paper?
Okay, we want you to raise some issues. Agreement comes.
I love these maps. I never understand them, but I'm fascinated by them. Mine, yes, I'm sure you know.
Sorry, excuse me.
Oh yeah, get the glass of water.
So I'm going to do a day man thing here without a chair. Okay.
Okay.
The question that we were thrown, or the point of debate that we were thrown, is what is a text today? We archive digital capture, but can we relate it to our historical knowledge? Immediately we start to deconstruct the whole question, because that's what people do. First of all, we focused around the word text. What is a text? We questioned the idea, what is a text? What is a text today? We started off right down here at the bottom, where I started drawing lots of little pictures and rounding certain things, but medium, media. We immediately went off the idea of a text as printed things. So there are more than, a text today is more than just a book or a railway ticket, something like that, but it can be a picture, it can be something else. I.e. descriptive material or something, or a collection of figures or observations that amount to something, a greater whole. Okay, information in data, but numbers, words. Okay. Then we went on. We went on to the idea. Sorry, it is going all over the place. But we went on to the idea that a text today could be secure or ephemeral. So something that you want to keep, or something that is consciously kept, or something like a bus ticket that you're going to throw away, but 200 years later somebody's going to find it and go, hey, that's a MasterCard. Like all over the place in London. Now, to us it doesn't mean anything, but to archaeologists in 200 years' time, they're going to sit there and go, that's the way they lived. Yeah? As the same way that we do with the Romans. We were going right out there very quickly. Digital capture. Well, we questioned the word digital as well. I mean, it presumes that we're going to capture everything digitally. I think the conclusions that we came to is that the easiest way today to capture things is digitally, because it allows volume of reproduction as opposed to limited reproduction, which was, we started at when we were talking about the text idea, when we started questioning.
In those days there was one
writes this, text is it's not necessarily something that's written. It could be an artifact, it could be a piece of pottery, it could be plastic, it could be like historical records,
the fact that it was really about what you wanted out of this knowledge, how you perceived it, changed the way that you interacted with it. So we thought about how we use it, what's the purpose of this knowledge. So different bits of information or knowledge may be used very differently by people who have different expectations out of it. So tools as a path to knowledge. How are these tools used? What's the accessibility to these tools? So if you think about, for example, the internet, coming back to the idea of background, certain people may not have access to the internet or may not be used to computers. Think about mobile phones, think about the generation that don't use mobile phones. So therefore, how are they going to use those in terms of accessing knowledge? Perhaps they're not. Perhaps the younger generation are going to take this on board rather more quickly because they're used to those tools. So this whole idea of what you're seeking to do with the knowledge, what knowledge can do for you, what the expectations are, the context, also time frame. When are you going to use this knowledge? Is it for immediacy, or is it just useful background information? How deep is the tense, for example? Is that knowledge? Or perhaps for some people that's interesting. So perhaps to some they'll file it away and perhaps draw it back later.
So our question was, groups now evaluate information online, Amazon book reviews, corporate evaluation of content. How does that affect our definition and development of knowledge? So we talked a lot about how individuals evaluate knowledge, and we actually got onto a pretty philosophical question about what is truth. So we won't go down that line, but that's kind of where it led to. I mean, we started talking about bias and whether people look at the positive or the negative reviews, and to the extent that reviews help define an issue or define the boundaries to the concept or the product. When we were looking at the idea of truth came out of a recent Google announcement that maybe they're developing a product that will allow politicians' statements to be tested out. To what extent are these things true? So that was actually at the Conservative Party conference.
Define truth.
So that idea was kind of pretty provocative. And do people want a yes or no answer? Are they prepared to take on shades of grey? What sources do you trust? What's available? How do you select stuff? Do you rely on Google's linking algorithm? Would you go with tagging? What's popular? What's maybe missed in the long tail that you brought up earlier? It's something that actually doesn't take a lot of cost, therefore you can actually go do it. And then finally, we went into sort of the development of this evaluation process through news or through blogging, and the feedback process getting faster and faster, so that actually what is knowledge used to be quite well defined and had some sort of time that it would last for, but now that's getting much quicker. Those are my points.
But what we actually started to talk about were things like digital Ouija boards. And anybody who's been in a PhD seminars will get this really big time. We started to talk about telepathy and how people can communicate without speech, without visual elements, and music, how music and connection between individuals might be a musical jam. This came out of work with autistic kids. This is not some theoretical debate that was going on so much as what happens when you don't have all your senses. And what happens when the digital technology can supply the missing parts? And how does that change what becomes knowledge? And knowledge in that context begins a very deep inner understanding and intuition, and how that works between cultures. And it's a whole new level of meeting. So I want to throw that in as a contribution to raising the debate about knowledge, because knowledge is not data. Knowledge is not that which we already know. It's that which we learn from the exchange. So without being heavy, there's something else here, and this is also not just a debate, but it's practically emerging from this environment. Okay. How about the wearable technologies, guys? Let's make it different.
The question was, will wearable technologies change the way we store and deliver knowledge? So the first thing we started doing was we started questioning, as most of the other groups did, the vocabulary used in the question. And we immediately crossed out the word will, because there are a lot of technologies that are already wearable. Whether you wear glasses or a watch. We felt that the term may be a little bit outdated. So we started there. After that, we had a number of people that, without disagreeing, definitely gave their point of view on how they perceive technologies like that invading, quote unquote, their personal being and their space. So we started talking about the speed of information, whether it solves or creates another problem. That was one of the main things. We had a little exercise where we took previous knowledge from another study, in which it said that most people take, with them on a daily basis their wallet, their key, and their mobile phone. So to make things simpler, we said, well, let's assume that the future wearable technologies will only be encompassed within these three forms of technology. And we got rid of the mobile phone and said, well, what if we could only make keys and wallets in this new world of wearable technology? And how would they change if we had to store and deliver knowledge, right? So we had a case in which we're talking about the key. And he said, well, maybe the key is not an actual artifact, but it's within ourselves, so that when you present yourself, maybe it's a patch that's within you. And there was only one key to every door that you needed to access, right? Or if you went to a bookstore or a library, and it determined whether you could read the book by this key, what would be the ethical effects of that would be? Let's see what else we have here. I'm trying to understand Darius' handwriting. Some of the technologies invading our privacy, but we don't consider some of the technologies we already have. So we were talking about credit cards, for example. If your credit card is taken away and examined, you can tell where you were when you were making those purchases. And a lot of different information could be derived from that. Am I missing anything else? Trust was a big thing. If all of a sudden we put all this trust that this technology will enable X, let's say, is we're talking about forecasting the weather. Will we trust our shoes to say today's going to rain? Or we would trust our own intuition and look up and say, well, I don't think it's going to rain today. How much trust are we going to have on these technologies and what they say to us, and what we consider to be known? So we had a lot of different perspectives. The last one I'll mention is, will the value of this wearable technologies increase or decrease whether the technology is mass-produced or not? So if only a group of us had it, and there was, quote-unquote, a wearable technology gap, will those people then be the ones only to benefit? Or will they suffer because they're the only ones that have it? At the same time, will the value increase if more people have this wearable technologies? And going back to the weather scenario, I said, well, it would be interesting if all of a sudden you could take a sample of East London and say, well, the exact temperature is X, because we can all transmit what we're reading as what the temperature is within our space, instead of having to depend on one central unit telling us, well, the temperature right now is X. We can sample each other if the technology can receive and transmit at the same time. So that's where we were wearable technologies.
Held in community in a company, and I can only speak for myself as a person in this community and the company of people that was discussing this question, and relay to you that we couldn't agree whether a house was like a person and a person was like a house in terms of how they collect and convey knowledge. And for me, knowledge is held in the activities and practices within these communities and companies through the necessity of having to survive. That's what sort of both dictates what is the knowledge that's required at that moment, and I've lost myself because I'm human and tired. And
when it comes to the rescue, what we also said was that we'd each get up and say what we each got from the conversation. And I'm going to be the first to break that rule because it is emerging. So what I've got totally inspired by, and if English is not your first language, I apologise. I've got totally inspired by the dance of passion between what can be described as embedded knowledge in cultural artefacts and embodied knowledge in me. And there is nothing better when you bring out the full potential both in me and the cultural artefact. That's a real dance of passion. So that's what I got out of that stuff. Where is it held?
Yes, my feeling was that our question was how is knowledge held in community and in company, and similarly I felt it was held through primal impulse and survival needs, that community held information to the point and was from generation to generation direct correlation with ability, survival mechanisms, and through practice, it had to do with the way community made a living related to the environment. If the environment fell away, it was unable to provide the resource, say if farming became impossible or other industry moved in, and that knowledge was gone within one generation. So that knowledge was clearly held through primal need and survival and practice, and that similarly corporations responded in a similar way, that knowledge, unless other mechanisms were put in place within one management system, knowledge could be less unless it was institutionalized in terms of mission and other ways that it was culturally impactful for the community of the company itself.
Do you not also need a common lexicon? Where I work at ECLG, we have issues with the FRSs because of their practices in the CFOA. That is actually no meaning. The same with, to put it on a slightly more banal thing, Star Trek, where they went to a planet where they spoke a language, they spoke an oath in a language they didn't understand, and it was actually the Declaration of Independence, because no one understood the language. Knowledge is useless without the lexicon to understand.
Capacity to communicate. Just one minor point. Is it often Jose made a presentation, at the time he made a presentation there, he made a classic statement, albeit innocently. He said, hang on, I'm trying to interpret somebody's handwriting. And that is the classic. It has been throughout the years and throughout the history. People have been trying to interpret other people's writings. And they have been coming to their own versions.
They have a challenge on communication, but anybody who be privileged to be at lunchtime, everybody
we have
here.
a problem there. We have a problem
At lunchtime today, everyone in the PhD group actually danced. Not necessarily because it was a dance design, but because we were doing a PR piece and we had to physically show up and be photographed, and we chose to use it as a piece of
I'm saying that when
the communication is very powerful.
the religious books.
We want to say that we want to invite everyone back. There is a lot of technology that we've not yet plugged into any power source. There is an enormous resource in this room, not just the people who live in that, and tonight's been fantastic. Thank you.
I just guess I found a couple of words in conclusion. And just to follow up on what Sheila was saying there, I think I probably slightly mispositioned this evening because I think some of you thought we were going to be seeing a lot more of the technology here. And as Sheila's saying, really it's not all quite plugged in yet. So you're pretty much saying we're invited back at some point.
Yes, please.
We'll come back and we'll get to actually see and touch and play with some of the technology. And maybe see where our thoughts have maybe moved on a little since this evening. But I'd just like to say a huge, huge thank you to both Sheila and Elizabeth for making this evening possible, and for the refreshments. Because for some reason, I don't quite know why, the wine always helps just a little. Just a little. It helps to surface the knowledge in some way.
Intuition.
So a huge thank you to both Sheila.
Thank you.
Do you want to say something about staying?
If anyone wants to continue the debate, we're here. We don't push away. So whatever works.